Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have an intimate group this afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our first attempt at doing a webinar regionally here in Region 8. We do have some folks from other regions joining us as well. Thank you to those folks for coming in also. The reason why we're doing this is because we realize the difficulty of folks coming out of district all the time for meetings and for coaching meetings and for PD and for networking opportunities. So we're really going to try to offer these. We're going to try to start by doing it every about 6 to 8 weeks and then maybe monthly with topics of interest, hopefully from you guys of what you'd like us to cover. And then some time to network and ask questions if you're struggling with something, or if there's a question you want to ask another school or district about how they approached something. So we're really hoping that this is going to fill a need for both giving you guys a little bit of PD, but more importantly, giving you an opportunity to network as well as talk to one another about maybe struggles that you're having and maybe getting ideas from other folks. So thank you for whoever just joined us. We're going to ask again before we get started to make sure that you are muted. And we're going to go in a minute to show you, if you'd like to speak, what to do. But today we're going to start our very first webinar. I'm going to apologize to you guys ahead of time because this is our first go at it. So if we screw something up, we will use the feedback and hopefully make it better for next time. And hopefully this will be worth your while. Like I said, we're really trying to do something so that people don't have to come out of their offices. It's so hard with you guys having such busy schedules. So without further ado, why don't we jump right into our webinar. Let's take a look at our features on our Zoom conference right now. So right now, if you might have already figured this out waiting, but there are a couple of controls that should be showing up, I think, at the bottom of your screen unless you changed that function bar. One is called Manage Participants, and the other one is called, what's the other one called? The chat feature, thank you. I have partially, my screen is blocked, I apologize. Manage Participants, if you want to raise your hand, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second, you will want to have that box open to be able to do that. If you want to get on the chat box, you'll want to have that open. So if you click on either one of those icons, that will open up those features for you. And what we would suggest is that you minimize your screen so that it's not full screen, so that you can have part of the screen with your presentation on one side, and then on the other side, you would have that chat box open if you need to chime in with us. And then you'd have also the raising of hands if you need to do that as well. So that's kind of what your screen should look like right now. The next screen that I'm showing you is going to show you specifically if you were to minimize your screen with the presentation. To raise your hand, you'll see that first red arrow. If you'd like to raise your hand and be able to be unmuted, we would ask you that you do that, and we'll unmute you, and then everybody will be able to hear your conversation. And then at the very bottom, I have the participants up at the top, and then at the very bottom is the chat feature. Again, if you want to chat for everyone to hear, that's where you will do the chatting, would be in that box as well. Okay, so I'm going to ask right now, and I have with me today, I am Heidi Kurchensky. I have with me Stephanie Denham and Chris Farrell. They're all on this video chat with us today, and they're going to help me monitor what's happening and answer questions if you guys have. At this point in time, is there anyone that has a question before we get started? You could type that right into the chat box, and I'll give a minute for that. And if there are no questions, we'll move on. Doesn't look like anybody has a chat, but anybody has a comment. But if you do, that chat feature is available to you, and please make sure that you do use it. So we're going to start with our learning targets for today. The first is going to be the issue of the data collection and analysis. We're going to go through a very simple, quick, I'll call it a simulation. And in that simulation, we're going to show you what your data system should be able to do and how you should be coming to your precise problem statement within a PBIS framework. We are also going to share, we're going to ask you guys, would it be beneficial? So maybe you can think about this now before we get started. I had a principal ask me, is there a place where we could upload local examples of what folks are doing in Region 8, kind of like a digital warehouse, so that other folks could get on and share or look at other samples from folks? So we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about, do you think that would be worth it for you guys to be able to see that? And then the last thing that we will end with will be next steps for our future meetings and webinars. We have some dates to choose from. Again, we'll do a 1 hour in December. There are 3 dates to choose from. And then we have some questions regarding what topics maybe that you would like to see available for those future webinars. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the very first question we're going to ask you guys this afternoon is, what single factor is most related to sustaining your PBIS framework? What do you think is the one thing that data points to that will sustain a framework? And I'll give you a couple seconds of wait time. And that would be the frequency with which data are presented to all school staff. So because of that reason, we are starting our very first webinar with that topic of data. It's really, really important that you do have data, you have it in a format that you can use it to make decisions, and that you are looking at it on a regular basis, as well as using it to make database decisions. So that's where we're going to start today. So the first portion of our webinar this afternoon will be a scenario. We'll open it up to questions or comments at that point, and then we'll look at some of those other things that we pointed to in our learning targets today. Okay, so what does this look like, this data collection and analysis in a school-wide PBIS system? So I would like to give credit to PBISapps.org because that's where I stole this scenario from. And they share this with their data system, and they have people think about how they make decisions based on kind of what the scenario provides. So I'm going to kind of read through the scenario, and then we'll open it up for questions about, can your data system do this kind of work, or what kind of data systems are you looking at, or what kind of data system do you use, and is that helpful to you when you're trying to make decisions within a PBIS framework? Okay, so we're going to start with Harbor Haven Middle School. This is going to be a simulation of how a data analyst would work through the drill down process in a data system. We're going to talk about Harbor Haven. It's a typical middle school housing grades 6, 7, and 8, and has a combined student enrollment of about 565 students. So this might be similar to your school or not, but this is going to be our model for this afternoon. So in this simulation, we know that there's been a buzz around the school that student behavior is getting worse. That's an uncommon problem, right? When we started the school year, everything seemed to be fine, but several months later, the teachers are complaining that they're constantly dealing with students messing around and not getting to class in a timely manner. And this is happening after lunch and during other breaks and transitions. But that's really just the beginning of what we need to figure out. So I need to explore this issue in more detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by running the Big 5+2 reports in my data system. These will help me identify if there's any patterns for the referrals that have been coming into the office. I can check my vital signs, so to speak, and see if there are any red flags that need to be further investigated in my data analysis. So I know those screenshots are a little bit small, so let's take a look at this. Is something you should be able to see a lot clearer. When I look at that average referrals per day per month graph, it does say that there's a trend, and if you see the trend is going up, there must be something to what the faculty is talking about as far as the behavior is concerned. Referral incidents are definitely on the rise, but I still need more information to figure out what's truly going on in the building. So what are my problem behaviors? Well, if you're looking at your screen, you should see that things like inappropriate language, defiance, and disruption really rise to the surface. Where are these problem behaviors being observed and referred? Well, playground, commons, cafeteria. In our school, we made a decision to use the playground location to capture anything that happens in our outdoor common area to differentiate between what happens in the indoor commons area. It's interesting that both the playground and the common areas seem to be rising as needs of concern. What about the times? What are we seeing as far as times are concerned? Well, it looks like there are some chunks of the day between 8 and 10:30, from 11 to 11:30, 12 and 12:30, 1:30 and 2:30. It's really hard to identify whether these are specific activities since this includes all students and locations. But at least we have kind of an idea of where we're going to start. So now let's take a look at who's involved. Well, the majority of these referrals, it looks like, are coming from these 8th grade students. We also know that 44 students have 2 or more referrals, and that's about 8% of our student population. That's not necessarily a problem since we're about 5 months into school year, but it does seem to be kind of a red flag that something's going on. So what do I know right now from what we have in our data system? Well, we know that from just running the Big 5+2 reports, our problem behaviors are inappropriate language, defiance, and disruption. Our problem locations are classroom, playground, commons, and cafeteria. And we also know that our 8th grade students account for most of the referrals. We do have specific time ranges as well. But from these reports, I can get a lot of puzzle pieces, but wait, it's really not the whole picture yet. So we have to pause. I know pieces of this information, but I don't know if they're connected. So we do have some red flags, but we don't know how they're connected. So in a data system, and thinking about what you guys are using right now, can your data system connect those pieces for you? We need to have a data system that can connect the pieces. So what might this look like? So if we go back to the information that we gathered using our Big 5+2 reports, and we identify some red flags, and we will start with those red flags to drill down into. As a data analyst, if I was the data analyst on the PBIS team, I would need to know really the structure of my school, my team. I would really need to know my data pretty well and how to prioritize any problems that come about. But but right now, for today's purposes, we don't really have that because we're going through a simulation. But I can provide a little background for this simulation, which means staff have been complaining that student behavior in the commons is increasing. So there is some anecdotal data. The playground and commons are often referred to collectively as the commons. So right now we're going to consider this as one location. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by identifying that as a red flag. Within our data system, we really know that if we drill down to the data and we have a system that can do that for us, this will help us make the connections. We start with the Big 5+2, but then we have to get deeper into the data to really know what the connections are between all those things that we've identified. So by drilling down, I now have a better idea of how the pieces connect. When I connect all the dots of my drill down, I can summarize for decision-making purposes and we can say something like many students are engaging in physical aggression and harassment in the commons across the day, and the behavior might be maintained by attention, but we're really not totally sure about that because we do have some unknowns in the referrals that we received. This is really the point at the data that what we're finding, at least here in Region 8, most data systems can't do this. You could probably get those Big 5+2 reports, but you can't in the data drill down see how they're connected. So this is really where the power of having a system that can do this, this is where the power is. This can be powerful because if you can make that connection, then you can see that you're able to get to a precise problem statement. You know that it's 13 students and they're engaging in physical aggression and harassment in the commons area. The behavior might be maintained by attention, but we're not really sure. And there have been 18 referrals in the past 4 weeks. So we know that because it's more than 10 kids, it is a system-wide problem. If it were less than 10, then we probably intervene with that group of kids. But we know that this is a system-wide problem. So we're going to have to do something to be able to address it. We're going to have to come up with some solutions to our problems. So the reason why we show you this is we're not going to show you exactly in the system what the drill down looks like. But if you do have a system that could slice and dice your data, you will be able to make those connections. There are some systems that we could suggest to you that can do that. And we have had some folks have some success doing that within like a Google system, but there is some groundwork that you have to do to be able to make those connections. The whole point of this simulation is to show you this is what your data really should be able to do, because if it cannot, it's very difficult to come to a precise problem statement, right? So, thinking about that, this would be something that the team would be able to problem solve and have a solution for if their data system were to be able to do that. One, they know that the target area is going to be the problem behaviors in the common areas. And what their goal is, this team decided what their goal was to reduce the referrals for physical aggression and harassment in the commons by 50% and in the hallway as well. They also set a sub-goal of reducing the unknowns for perceived motivation, because what was happening is the teachers were writing referrals, but they were uncomfortable saying what the motivation was, which we find very common. Teachers don't a lot of times like to put that on the referral, but it's really important to find out what the function of the behavior is, or else we're not going to be able to come up with a solution that's going to be very good. It's not going to address the function. So this is really what they did. They had some action steps for preventing the behavior, for actually teaching and reteaching the behavior, for recognizing when students were doing what they should do in those areas, what they could do to extinguish the behavior. They set a corrective consequence, and then they set a kind of a plan for what they were going to do for data collection to see next time if they collected that data, are we seeing a reduction and are we reaching our goal? So what I've included for you guys to take back with you would be a drill down worksheet. In the email that I sent, you should have gotten a drill down worksheet that can kind of help you filter down through these areas. And what you'll notice on that sheet is that it will ask you for all of the things that you drill down. It's like the who, what, when, where, and why of the problem. You'll notice on that referral summary also in the middle there, it talks about how many students were involved. And that's when you drill down, you really want to decide if it's more than 10, it's probably a system-wide problem, which means you have to have a system-wide solution. If it's less than 10, you probably could intervene with those students individually. The next thing you see on that worksheet is there's a place for the precise problem statement where you can really put down what you think the problem is, an area for the goal, and then at the very bottom is that solution development, which is kind of what we just looked at right here. It's just built into the worksheet for you. But again, you really want to think about, since this is in this particular scenario, this is a system-wide problem, you really have to approach it from a system-wide perspective. And that's really what they did in their solution development. They talked about prevention on a system-wide level with the active supervision. They talked about how they were going to reteach, really providing recognition on a system-wide level, and some of the other things that they came up with. So that's really how they were going to attack that system problem. And they could have used this drill down worksheet. So what we would like to pose to you at this point is that thinking about what you're currently using, is it getting you to that precise problem statement? Can it get you, first of all, can it give you the big 5+2? That's really important because that's where you start your problem solution development. And then can it kind of drill down further so that you can see what the connections to the locations, the behaviors, the kids, the grades, can it make those connections for you? So I'm going to pause for a minute. If anybody would like to raise their hand at this point, I will throw that option out to you. And I would also throw the option out to you for the chat box. Any thoughts about what you've seen so far? Anything about what you're currently doing that can or cannot do this? Okay, I'm not seeing questions. I'm not seeing any hands being raised. So I'm assuming at this point, maybe you guys are totally overloaded with what I just presented, because it is kind of, it's kind of an intense process. Maybe I would ask Stephanie to talk a little bit about what she has seen with the district that she's working with, where they went from one data system and then going to a data system that was able to do the drill down feature, what that helped that system do. So what I think I will do is you could probably talk from here. I don't think I need to unmute you.
Hi, everybody. I think the main difference that I've seen it in 2 districts now, where the current system that they were using wasn't allowing for that drill down feature without a lot of work on a data analyst side between meetings. I had a lot of internal facilitators, building principals, and team members hand calculate data for a long time. and or use it kind of as an Excel feature, either from Google Drive and then export it into Excel, which will allow filters. But the problem always seems to be, as natural questions arise on the team, it isn't flexible. If you do all that data entry kind of before the meeting, it doesn't allow for a flexible conversation as kind of a system does that Heidi just showed. So I think there's definitely benefits to that. I think that the struggle always is with districts with data collection. Do we want to do double entry? Do we have to buy a system? And so working with your team on identifying what a precise problem statement is and how your data collection system will allow you to get that, I think has been helpful in various districts that I've seen.
I would agree with that as well. I think it really is the context of the team, the context of your school, the kids, the community, and what's going to work. And I know a lot of schools don't want to pay for extra systems or don't want the extra systems to kind of get involved with the other data collection that they're doing. So that is something that your team would really want to talk about. So we do have a question. Do you have an example that a district uses to pull this data? I have the ability to get the location, dates, etc., but it's not a quick process. So for that question, I would say that the best system we probably have seen has been the SWIS system, and that stands for School-Wide Information System. It is a cost for that system. The example that I just showed you guys was actually from a SWIS training that I attended, and that's the way they kind of look at it. And their system has the ability to work through that worksheet and really drill down to the precise problem statement. So SWIS is one. We have seen some districts have some success with collecting some information in Google, but that can be limiting, especially when it comes to, I think, the drill down feature, as Stephanie explained. It's harder to make those connections. So the one system that we truly know that can do that work is SWIS. Sometimes if you don't have a lot of data, you can kind of do some of that analysis by hand. But again, that's something that you would have to talk about with your team to see who might have the expertise, who would have the time, who would have the ability to be able to do that. The problem does come in is if you are collecting a lot of referrals, it becomes much more problematic because the connections are not so obvious because there's so much data in the system. So the one that we would suggest would be SWIS, School-Wide Information System, SWIS, and that is, you can find information about that system at PBISapps.org. And if you go to the SWIS, there's different tabs you can click on. If you click on the SWIS tab, that will give you information. Any other questions? We did utilize the chat feature. Thank you. Any other thoughts regarding, is anybody out there having success with a data system that they're using currently that doesn't really do this kind of a process? Because if you do maybe have smaller amounts of data, you might be successful with doing something else. You know, this is what we know, but that doesn't mean this is the only way to do it, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to do the webinar today. Okay. Well, in the email that you did receive, you will find the slides from this presentation with the exception of how to navigate. I didn't include those, but you will have the slides. If there is further information you would like about drill down, about how you should be coming to a precision problem statement, most of you, I'm sure, know who your consultants are for PBIS, so please reach out to those folks and they can help you with that. And if anything else comes up in the remainder of this webinar, please feel free to enter that into the chat box or you can raise your hand as well. All right, so we'll move on to the next question, and that is sharing of resources. So I was approached by a principal that had asked, do we in Region 8 have like a warehouse that has resources, examples, pictures maybe, of things that folks are doing so that it could be accessed by anybody who might want that information? What we do have, and Stephanie Denham was so great to do this, is some of the things that we've collected, we have at the state support team in a notebook. We have pictures, we have example forms, we have all of that kind of stuff, but that's kind of it's in our possession. It's not something that can be accessed readily by folks who might want that information. So a principal did approach me and say, would it be beneficial for us to have somewhere that we could house things that people could upload, people could share? What I would ask right now on the chat, do you think that would be beneficial? Would you utilize that if we did do something like that in Region 8? Would it be valuable to have a central location to house photos, forms, resources, anything people have created for their own internal PBIS system that would be beneficial? No, good. We got somebody chatting. Oh, we got a couple people chatting. Thank you. You could, if you guys want to just, you can just.
One said yes, it would be valuable, thank you, and another person said yes.
Okay, so I guess one of the action, we got some more coming in.
I think so, at least it would be a place to start.
Okay, so I think what we will do is we will probably create some kind of a Google Drive, which is probably the easiest, and we'll send a link to it. And what we'll do, my only concern about giving editing rights to folks, I only have one concern about that, and that is if people go in, and we've had things that have happened where a presenter will share something and they've gone in and actually changed documents because they have editing rights. So I'm not sure, maybe that's something that our team can look at, is how we could give you access to upload, but not have folks be able to edit, because we don't want people changing forms and stuff, since that's something that would be valuable to you. We don't want people changing that stuff. So one of our action steps here then will be to go ahead and make some kind of a folder, digital, or maybe it's something like I don't know a lot about, what's that digital online that the special ed uses? Not Edmodo, the LiveBinder. Maybe LiveBinder might be a better way to do that, is do something in LiveBinder instead of maybe a Google folder. So we'll investigate Google Drive, we'll investigate LiveBinder, and any other kind of a file sharing kind of a service to see what would be best so that we can do that. And then we'll give access to you guys, absolutely, to be able to get in there and upload and do all that kind of stuff, to be able to share those materials and information. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for getting on the chat. I'm seeing that you guys are using that, and I appreciate it. This is a learning experience for us as well. This is our first one. So hopefully this will grow and get better with time. Okay, so I think to me that's kind of a yes. It sounds like a yes that would be beneficial. So we will investigate that and we will get back to you. Let's take a look at our next slide, and that is just questions and networking from you guys. Is there anything that you guys would want to pose to somebody else from another region, because we do have a couple consultants from other regions. One is from Region 9, which is a little bit south of us in the Stark County area, and we do have someone from Region 6. We're wondering, is there something that a question that you guys have, something that you'd want clarification on, if some issues with like a barrier that you're dealing with that might be beneficial to ask the group that's on today? Is there something that you would like to pose to the group, I guess is what we're asking. And we'll give you a minute to either use the chat box, or if you want to speak, if you want to raise your hand, I'll unmute you and you could speak to the group. Any questions for the group to answer? Anything you guys are struggling with? And I'll give you a little bit of, I'll give you another minute or so wait time. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, there's a good question. I will go back. I'm sorry about that, you guys. Who is, I did see the question, who is having success with high school implementation? Anybody having success with high school? Now, I know we have a participant that can talk about middle school. I don't know if we want to talk about secondary in general, but is there somebody that could talk about their success with secondary implementation? And Christina, I think you're still on. I don't want to throw you under the entire large bus, but we do have somebody on the chat, so maybe we'll answer that. If maybe that's something you could speak to, even though you are middle school and it's still a secondary. What's on the chat? We have, great, from Portage Lakes Career Center. Oh, awesome. Okay, so Tina, would you mind if I unmuted you, and could you talk maybe a little bit about that? I think that would be awesome. So let me see if I can figure out how to do this. So there you are, and I'm going to unmute you.
Hello?
Oh, awesome.
Is it working? Maybe I should close my door in case the bell rings.
Loud and clear, loud and clear. Could you talk a little bit about what you've done at PLCC?
Yeah, so we've been up and running for quite a few years now. And like I mentioned in the chat, definitely the teacher buy-in is the biggest challenge at the high school level. But you know what? We don't care. We're just pushing through with it and reminding them every day that everybody likes this kind of stuff, even adults. So yeah, that's definitely been our biggest challenge. But you know, one of the things that you said at the beginning that resonated with me was just that reminding them, showing them the data that this does work. That much more gets the buy-in and gets them to, you know, remember, okay, wow, you know, those referrals really are going down, you know. So we're definitely not doing the job that we should be with analyzing the data, you know, and where are these instances happening. But I think part of that is because we're so small. It's pretty clear to see where the issues are and to address those sort of individually. So it's going well. And I'm sure we have a lot of room to grow, but it's going well.
You guys have kind of a double, I don't want to call it a double-edged sword because it's, you guys are both a high school and a career center. So that, right. I think sometimes in and of itself can be problematic for this framework.
Oh, for sure. Because a lot, you know, and it's nothing against career tech teachers because I think they do an outstanding job, but there is this attitude that, you know, when kids come to a career center that they're being prepared for work and, you know, they're, you know, ready for adulthood and this kind of thing. And it's, you know, we have to remind them they're still kids, you know, they're right. Still learning. So it's a challenge.
Well, thank you for sharing and thank you for sitting in on our first ever webinar. We appreciate it. And thank you for that insight. I think it's probably some of the issues that you guys had, I think, can be problematic at all levels, but particularly at the secondary, it is tough.
Yes, definitely.
I'm going to go ahead and mute you, and I'm going to unmute Christina. So, okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Unmute Christina. And Christina, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Awesome. So talk about the middle school, what you guys have done.
Oh, where would you like us to start, I guess? You know, we're several years into PBIS at the middle school. I agree that teacher buy-in is a huge part of it. But I think if you're getting frustrated, it just takes time. And it takes time for staff and students to see the results of the program. So third year in my building, and I think we're starting to see the decrease in referrals and being able to address small issues from the tier 1 standpoint. So you just have to celebrate those small successes so that people see that the system is working.
Absolutely. So maybe the person that asked about the high school implementation, is there something specific you'd want our folks to talk about? And I think they put in the chat. And that is seeing the value of the framework in general, especially from the admin point of view, and the criticism that we shouldn't have to reward students for expected behavior. How did you get beyond that? Christina, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we're necessarily, at the middle school, we don't reward behavior on a day-to-day basis. So I guess our whole system is our kids do earn Pride tickets. We went to electronic QR codes this year that go to a Google form that they fill out. It's quick, short, and sweet.
Yeah, and maybe that's something you guys would be willing to share at another webinar, because I think people would be really interested in that.
Yeah, for sure. So the kids get their Pride tickets right away, and they scan it, fill out the quick Google form, and they get to turn their ticket into 3 different drawings. We have weekly drawings that are for small things that are free. A pajama pants pass. They can wear their headphones to school. They can have an exclusive lunch in the conference room with a few friends. That's a hot commodity.
Oh,
They sit in the teacher's chair instead of a student chair for a period. So they could pick those types of things. We do a quarterly reward where we pull 4 winners from the building, and they get a $25 gift card of their choice. And then at the semester, we pick 2 winners for a $50 gift card to a place of their choice. So in regards to rewarding them for what we expect them to do, we're more recognizing the behavior and reinforcing it in a positive way. Thank you for being respectful to your peers. Thank you for including someone who didn't have a partner to work with you, and giving them that Pride ticket, but they're not really getting, a piece of candy or something that second as the reward. We make them wait, which I think tries to piggyback off of that intrinsic motivation.
Awesome. And maybe I'll throw that also back to Tina to answer that specifically. I'll unmute you, Tina, if you don't mind, if there's something directly about that question, past the reward pieces, I guess.
Hi. Yeah. So I just sort of chatted as she was talking, but again, we like to remind our staff that, it feels good to be recognized when you do the right thing, even as a grown-up. And we always remind, what did I say? And we always like to remind them that, if you always do what you always did, you're always going to get what you always got. And for these kids, it's not working, and the kids that need it the most are the kids that aren't demonstrating the behaviors that we really need them to demonstrate. So, if we have a program like this, it gives us the perfect opportunity to recognize that kid who is, and it doesn't have to be something like, oh, the kid held the door open for you. But how about that kid who keeps putting their head down in class every single day? Something in the system is not working for them. So we want to have these opportunities to recognize them, the second that they aren't putting their head down in class. Hey, I noticed you didn't put your head down in class today. Here's a character card, which is what our system is. And sort of, the teachers get it then, I think, a little bit more. So that's my soapbox.
No, listen, you're preaching to the choir here on the end of the computer. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Any other, you guys are monitoring the chat. Is there anything else after that? So we talked a little bit about the reward part of the framework. Really, we'd like to call it feedback and redirection probably. Is there any other questions that people would like to throw out to the group? You guys seeing anything on? Thank you, everyone. Helpful comments and feedback. Oh, good. Good. Okay. So our hope really with doing these, and today, like I said, was a kind of our first run at it, and I'm so excited that you guys joined us. I was hoping we'd have a few more folks. I'm thinking maybe as time goes on, we'll gain traction and we'll have more folks doing this, but we would really like to see things like, as I just was talking, as Christina was talking, that QR code thing. Now that's something that I think a lot of people could benefit from, and if we could get on, like once a month for an hour to talk about what's working for folks, that maybe that's something that we could share a little bit. People would probably much rather hear from you guys, but really developing a network so that we can share what's working, looking at, the different levels and what's working at the high school, at the elementary, at the pre-K level, and what people are doing, and really having this network to have a vehicle in which to do that. So I do have a survey that I'm going to ask you guys to do in a minute, and to see where we should go next. But before we go there, is there anything else that anybody else would like to bring up to the group? Or is there any more we'd like to talk about that reward system or doing things? I think you guys, both Christina and Tina, did a very nice job addressing of how they've kind of approached it in their each respective buildings. Is there anything out there that you guys any other question you want to pose for feedback from folks that are on this call. Okay, somebody's, could you guys?
Love the webinar format.
Ah, love the webinar. All right, tell your friends. We have more folks. Awesome. Well, we just received this software, and we've, some of us have been asking for it for several years. We've wanted to do this a long time ago, but it's Zoom. So if, just for your knowledge, if you ever want to use it, it's really, really easy. And we are going to continue to use the software and use this format. So, you know, you can get a free, I think it's free up to 30 people. And you can go to Zoom. I think it's zoom.com if you guys want to use it internally or with your own folks. But we really liked it so far. We've recorded some things for the Ohio improvement process, and this is our actual first go at it live. So it's been pretty easy so far. So we really do like the format. I'm going to throw it out one more time. Any last questions before we go and look at thinking about what we might want to talk about next time? Okay, well, if you still do, we still do have a couple of minutes. But what I would like you guys to look at this point would be this tiny URL. And what this is going to ask you is, what would be future topics that you'd like to see covered in these webinars that we're going to try to do every 6 weeks or every month? Also, we're going to try to set a date in December. There are 3 dates, again, from 1 to 2. Or if you guys could suggest a better time of day, we just picked that because we just picked that. If there's a better time of day, let us know. Maybe you could put that in the chat. They're in the Google form. There's no place for that, but you can maybe put that in the chat if there's a better time of day. But we would like to get a little bit of feedback from you. If next month you would really like to look at maybe the QR codes, if Christina's available, maybe we could do that as well. There is a place for other, and if that's something of interest, or we could get her on a webinar, maybe not, if she can't do it next month, maybe a future webinar. But if that's something, you can put that in the fill in the blank in the Google form. So we would ask that you do that right now, and we're going to pull up the responses so we can see what you guys are thinking. Okay, awesome. And I can pull it up.
Can you share the link in the chat box?
Yes, I'm going to share the link in the chat box. If that's easier, maybe to click on it instead of trying to, because you guys are only seeing it from my screen, I will put that in the chat box. Yeah, there's my stuff. And we'll pull that back up to see. Oh, we got one response. We'll wait till everybody has a chance to respond. Some folks have already said that the QR codes might be of interest, and Christina already said that she'd be available to be able to share that, hopefully. Okay, we have 3 responses. Uh-oh. We'll give it another minute or two, and then we'll take a look at what the responses were. I should have shut off my phone. That was... All right. It's looking like the TFI and self-assessment survey seems to be not by much, but has 3. So that's kind of top. It also looks like acknowledgement systems, error correction as well. We're looking at, looks like December 11th seems to be the best date. And it looks like some of you guys would feel that doing a face-to-face with Region 9 would be beneficial. So we'll, I'll have to, I'm not sure if, is Val still on the call? I'll have to get with Val to figure out, I'll have to get with Val to figure out where that's going to be. We would like to probably have it somewhere in between Region 8 and 9 so everybody doesn't have to drive too far. So we'll look into that. So it looks like, well, let's ask Christina, would you be available to talk about your QR code system on December 11th from 1 to 2? Would you be able that day to do that? Because we can talk about, yep, that works for you. Awesome. So it looks like we're going to be doing QR codes, and that maybe those are the 2 things we talk about for data is the QR codes for the reinforcement, and then we'll share TFI and SAS information as well. It looks like, and then we'll provide some time for networking. Okay. So we would like to thank you for joining us this first time for our first go-around. Any last questions for the good of the group that anybody didn't get a chance to ask or would still like to ask? We'll give a minute or 2 for that. If not, we will follow up with you with the things that we talked about today. And if there's somebody that, I don't think there's anybody on this webinar that is not on my network list, because that's usually how I get to you with this information. I will put that in that network email that I send with what we'll do and when it's going to be, and I'll send you the link and everything for December 11th or whatever it was that we said was the best date. A couple more people in the chat. Is there anything else?
Thank you.
Oh, just thank yous. Okay. Thanks you guys for being great with us learning the technology. Next time it'll be like a well-oiled machine, I hope. Yes, yes. And if in the meantime, if you guys need anything, you guys know who your consultants are. If anybody needs to be added to my network email, please let me know. Most of you know how to get to me. And if there's other people you think that would benefit, please share. And I'm going to say with the webinars, we have the ability to serve up to 100 people. So next time, if there's other people that you want to share with, please make sure that you do that. But we do thank you for being with us today. And we will see you next month with QR codes and TFI and SAS data and with some other time for networking. In the meantime, too, we'll try to get that link together to house data or to house examples, and we'll hopefully be able to share that with you by in December, our next meeting. Thank you, guys.